Okay, we're going to begin. So I want to start off by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. We're studying intelligence and cognitive functioning. Now, if we're going to talk about intelligence, we're going to start off with cognitive functioning. It refers to the mental processes. What is it? It refers to what enables thinking, learning, memory, decision making. It shapes the way people responds or interacts with their surroundings. Consider the brain, which is a part of the central nervous system. And, you includes the frontal lobe, the motor cortex, the prefrontal cortex, and you can think of what we do in our daily task. You can talk about what we do in a way of calculations when we perform from memory and even the multiple choice tests that we may do. And you can also talk about the broadcast area, which is crucial for language and production, helping us talk and form sentences all together. These areas play key roles in how we move and communicate. So you're going to voice your answer to a question or perspective on an idea. So each morning you wake up, you're thinking about what you need to do on a day. You may wonder which errand to run first. Should you go to the bank or to the cleaners or a grocery store? And you're thinking about whether you can finish these tasks before class or if you need to wait until later. So these thoughts show that your mind is at work, and the process called cognition is very important for being aware and making decisions, even if you don't notice all of what is happening inside of your brain. So our brain is wired for cognitive functions. So now this is where intelligence comes in. So what does intelligence mean? It seems to take on various definitions depending on the context. It's the ability to think clearly, understand different things, and learn from experience. And when we face problems, it lets us reason through them and find solutions. Intelligence is it's about knowing facts, or it's about how we use the insight in real life situations. Well, one common measure is intelligent quotient IQ, a score used to compare people's thinking abilities. When we take this test to see how smart we are, we're actually defining what we think intelligence means. So, yes, it's a common way to measure intelligence. Then again, this could also mean that we might be limiting our view of intelligence to just what the test measures, while ignoring other types of smartness that the test might never capture. Q tests. Well, this originated from the earlier tests designed for children, scoring based for mental age divided by chronological age, then multiplying by 100. This score is aiming for an average of 100 for a child. And you'll notice that the IQ score percentile, it's you're looking at the normal distribution of the IQ score. It's shaped like a bell. The means of this score ranges from 70 to 130. These scores would then taper off on either ends, representing only 2% of the population. Now, let's look back to the very first intelligent test. It was 1905, created by Alfred Binet to help identify French school children who required additional academic support. Now, this innovation aimed to assess students' cognitive ability and has been instrumental in educating educational settings ever since. And the correlation between the I score and the school grades typically fall in the range of 40 to 60, 0.40 to 0.60. Now, when you think about a correlation coefficient, you might see that there is a linear relationship between school grades and their IQ scores. It's like a x-intercept and a y-intercept on the graph. So it's just to form that little mental picture if you want to think of the ranges. Tests fair. Critics argue that traditional intelligence tests often align closely with academic performance and higher socioeconomic status. This relationship stems from the design on tests themselves, which many believe favor cultural knowledge and problem-solving skills typically found in more affluent populations. But is that fair? As a result, individuals from lower socioeconomic backgrounds may perform poorly, not due to a lack of intelligence, but because the intelligence do not adequately measure their capabilities. So this raises many questions, important questions about the fairness and the exclusivity of such assessments. So a few tests are designed to be cultural free, and such as the Raven progressive matrices. And this here's an example of as you look at the bar on the side, here's an example of Raven's progressive matrix. It's widely used on nonverbal intelligence tests that focuses on assessing abstract reasoning and fluid intelligence. It evaluates an individual's ability to recognize visual patterns and solve complex problems without relying on language skills. So the test consists of a series of visual matrices where participants must identify the missing piece from various options, and it's culturally neutral. Of conventional intelligence tests argue that true intelligence it holds much more than what these standardized assessments reveal. They highlight examples where practical intelligence often is referred to as street smart. Some may have a more narrow definition of this skill. If you can survive in the most dangerous communities, then you have street smart. But most understand it through the optics of the social construct. It is in the contrast to book smarts. It's associated with situational awareness and adaptability. It no doubt's more valuable than book smart. So remember this. It suggests that intelligence is multifaceted and incorporates practical knowledge and emotional awareness that are often overlooked by conventional testing methods. Debate over whether intelligence is a single capability or a collection of independent abilities is crucial in understanding it biologically. Now, this debate among researchers has been going on for some time. You have one group, the lumpers. They argue that intelligence is a unitary factor, often referred to as G or general, emphasizing its overall importance. In other words, if you are a psychology professor, there's no reason why you cannot run a large multi-billion-dollar corporation. And in contrast, you have the splitters, their opponents. They assert that intelligence it consists of multiple distinct mental abilities rather than a single unified skill. They focus on the scores from subtests of standard IQ tests, emphasizing the importance of the individual cognitive abilities, and their differences. To say it simply, just because you're a psychology professor, it does not mean you will be a successful business person. There, if smart individuals have brains that look different from others. A famous example is Albert Einstein's brain, which scientists studied after his death. They found that it was mostly normal and even lighter than average, weighing 1,230 grams, which is about 100 grams less than most men his age. This suggests that having a higher level of intelligence might not be linked to clear differences in brain size or structure, at least in Einstein's case. So there were studies on Einstein's brain. It revealed that typical number of neurons, but fixed findings on density and cortex thickness, and also a higher glial to neuron ratio appeared in his left uh, parietal lobe, and enlarged parietal lobes tied to math and visual spatial skill, and raised questions about their connections to his gift. So brain size matter. Meta-analysis of 88 studies, including more than 8,000 individuals, found correlation between intelligence and brain size of 0.24. So, even if a small connection between brain size and intelligence can be confusing when we look at different animals. For example, elephants, they have much larger brains, but most people don't think that they're smarter than humans. Scientists have tried many ways to explain intellectual differences between species. They looked at the number of brain cells and even the size of the brain compared to the body. Surprisingly, this suggests that a tiny marmoset monkey might be smarter than humans, but it shows how complicated understanding that animal intelligence can be. So this could reflect the information processing capacity. The information processing capacity, or IPC, of elephants is much lower because of a thin uh, cortex, low neuron packing and density, low axon conduction velocity. So it's not the size that matters, in short. Not processing speed and efficiency. Gray matter is useless without the white matter connections that forms the brain communication network, and its quality depends on processing speed. So, study about how the brain works shows something surprising about intelligence. People with higher IQs use less energy in their brains when solving problems. For example, when playing Tetris, smarter individuals show lower glucose use, meaning they were more efficient, in contrast to people with mild intellectual abilities. So IQs between 50 and 70 had to use 20% more brain activity for the same task compared to those with IQs of 150 or higher. This shows that a smarter brain can do more with less effort. Early 20th century English psychologist named Charles Spearman, he developed a theory about intelligence using a method he created called factor analysis. He gave many tests to a group of people to see how different mental abilities are related. By looking at how the results of the tests correlated, he found that skills like math, words, art, and reasoning were connected. This led him to believe that these abilities might be influenced by a single factor. So he called it general intelligence. Does intelligence come from? Scientists often will use twin studies to determine the heritability of intelligence. The Minnesota study of twins reared apart is one of the most well-known twin studies. In this investigation, researchers found that in identical twins raised together and identical twins raised apart exhibit a higher correlation between their high IQ scores than siblings or fraternal twins raised together. Now, research shows that IQ correlations among relatives tend to be stronger for those who are more closely related, but this means that family members, particularly identical twins, typically have more similar IQs than those who are less related. So there is a range of reaction. And now in this theory, that posits that each person responds to the environment in a unique way based on their genetic makeup. According to this idea, your genetic potential is a fixed quantity, but whether you reach your potential, your full intellectual potential or not, depends on the environmental stimulation you experience, especially in childhood. Now, it's near impossible to determine with certainty whether these variables will even apply, even for a child. So a longitudinal study on high gifted individuals revealed that both positive and negative experiences are common in the background of gifted children. Interestingly, those who grew up in supportive family environments reported greater happiness. Now to the question of nature or nurture. Some of you might remember the genetic controversy that intelligence is highly inheritable. Arthur Jensen argued that in environment and socioeconomic differences are inadequate to account for the observed IQ differences among groups. 106 for East Asians, 100 for whites, 85 for blacks, and so on. In addition, they say that IQ gaps correspond to differences in brain sizes. Remember the elephants? So a task force appointed by the American Psychological Association to they conducted a study to settle the intelligence debate. They concluded that there is not much direct evidence regarding the genetic hypothesis that IQ differences between African Americans and white that and what little differences there is does not support the hypothesis. So most intelligence researchers agree that intelligence is the result of the joint contributions of genes and environment. It has even been said that intelligence is 100% hereditary and 100% environmental because both are necessary. However, it has been more difficult than expected to identify just which environmental conditions influence intelligence other than those that causes brain damage. Now we know that intelligence is complex, and as complex as it is very fragile. And we have a list of conditions that can impair intelligence, and it's depressingly long. And you can talk about what causes these deficiency. Aging can be one of them, but then when you talk about aging on intelligence, the amount of loss has been overestimated. Uh, Many have maintained their intellectual capacity, even though there were some deficiencies or there have been some decline, but it's been overestimated. So you have intelligence is subject to physical disorder and yes, genetic and environmental deviations. And so you have the loss of intellectual functioning with age is less than previously believed. So intellectual disability has many causes, including disease, fetal alcohol syndrome, Down syndrome, Fragile X syndrome, and so on. And there are a range of brain anomalies, and they may have effects on intelligence. And there is an interplay between heredity, the environment, and intellectual disorders. But uh, what can a community like the church do? I think that the church can play a integral role in the lives of individuals who are experiencing some type of deficiency and disorder. So, in regard to the psychological disorders, I'm going to leave that lesson to chapter 14, where the next person will go into greater depth on that topic. So I want to thank you all for listening, and I hope you gained something of value from this presentation.